Hello everyone, back with another episode of Fishman Chats. It's Reese from Fishman Aquatics, and today we have with us Dr. David Poole of Fishscience. Hello, David.
Hello, good to see you.
Not too good. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, enjoying some spring weather at long last.
Yeah, it looks nice and sunny on your face there.
Yeah.
You sure you're not getting any glare through the glasses?
Well, not as far as I know anyway. No, it's just the weather's turned really good. It's supposed to be cool, but it's lovely and warm. Fish are out, fish are feeding. So yeah.
It's perfect weather to be fishing, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, so let's get kind of stuck in. So obviously you're the owner and creator of Fishscience. Now, we're going to go back to a time before that. So how is it that you actually got started in the industry, or did you ever have aquariums as a kid and things kind of snowballed and developed from there?
Yeah, I go back, well, too many years, but when I was at sort of school, my parents, my uncles, my granddad, in fact, the whole family were fishermen. And so my sort of interest in fish was triggered by initially trying to catch them and then having aquaria. So I think I had my first aquarium when I was about 9. And it was two goldfish, one at a fair. And we had those goldfish, we had them over 20 years before they finally passed away. But so yeah, goldfish were my sort of the first fish, but then I had a tropical aquarium, just a mixed one. Then I did an extra tank that had an Oscar in it that ended up being a pair of Oscars, and then they bred. So nice introduction to fish keeping, and really that was what sort of triggered everything else. So I went to university, studied fisheries and fish management, then did a PhD on the diseases of koi carp, a particular tapeworm that infected koi carp. And as part of that work, I actually met up with a guy who some of the listeners may remember from the very distant past, a guy called Chris Andrews, Dr. Chris Andrews, who was the curator of the London Zoo Aquarium, and later went over to Baltimore and then South Carolina Aquaria. But Chris used to work for Tetra. He was their consultant. When he got the job at London Zoo, he couldn't combine the two. So I took over his role at Tetra, sort of acting as a consultant running their information service, and just sort of generally providing advice to fish keepers, doing bits of radio work, TV work. In those days, answering letters. We used to answer about 5,000 letters a year.
Wow.
So it was very different to what it is today.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Tetra is its own brand in itself, and some time has been from there. So what was the stepping stone from Tetra into Fishscience itself? Like how did Fishscience start from there?
Well, I worked for Tetra for about 26, 27 years and sort of covered all sorts, from marketing to sales, then ran the UK and South African businesses for them. But about 10 years ago, the company were taken over by a much bigger operation over in the States, and they decided that they didn't want the head office that we had, the UK head office where it was. So we had to close the head office down in Southampton. So I had to make about 20 people redundant, took redundancy at the same time, and certainly didn't have the idea at that stage of starting another fish food company. But a chance conversation with an ex-colleague who was working for an insect meal producing company just kind of triggered a thought that, you know, we could use insect meal in fish foods. And that really started it. We started doing some work. The fish liked it. We tweaked it, changed it. The fish liked it even more. And Fishscience was born.
Yeah, so, I mean, Fishscience probably has the best reputation using mostly natural ingredients, or as natural as ingredients as is possible. I know for a fact you don't use many things just to fill it out. It is based on as many insect meals and things like that as is possible. In my opinion, Fishscience is the best food on the market currently.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And we use it in store with the stuff that you give us anyway. Aside from using Fishscience, we'll use frozen foods. So everything is as natural as possible either way for the fish we use. So yeah, we are an avid, what's the word I'm looking for, beacon holder or torchbearer for Fishscience. Yeah, we love it. I mean, you see the plugs that we do online and things like that, and YouTube and things like that as well. But it's surprising that it all came about as a possible chance encounter.
I think, I mean, it very definitely was. It was simply a guy that I knew who he was working for a company called Protix, or acting as a consultant for a company called Protix, who were one of the forerunners in trying to produce black soldier fly meal and then finding uses for it. So black soldier fly are a brilliant insect. They'll eat anything from manure to fruit to brewery waste to meat, anything, and they grow really quickly, and they've got a great nutritional profile and produce some really neat proteins. And he, at the time, they hadn't got anybody commercially that they could use the insect meal with, so they were doing lots of trials, from fish to dogs, cats, even human trials to try and get this fantastic new ingredient used. And we came along following the conversation and just tried it with ornamental fish, and because they weren't part of the human food chain, we were allowed to commercialize it. We were allowed to start using it. So it was a really as you say, one of those chance conversations that just as rolled, and it's rolled for me as Fishscience. We've developed the whole idea, and we've got a much bigger and fuller range, and I would say better foods than we had then. But also other companies have got on the insect meal bandwagon, and there's now, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 companies that are using insect meal as one of the ingredients in their foods.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I know of a few myself anyway, but you can't, I suppose we can call you the daddy of insect meal. I mean,
yeah, makes it sound very old, doesn't it?
I mean, we can't just say that Fishscience was born as a chance encounter. You've got that whole background, like say, with your PhD in tapeworms and koi and going to university and everything. So you do have quite an in-depth knowledge on the industry itself, and in terms of, I'd probably say more the biology of fish or anatomy of fish. Which one would you say?
Well, it's both. I mean, the biology in terms of the nutrition is obviously important, but the anatomy and making sure that you're producing or providing the fish with the building blocks to make sure they are healthy, have all the bits that they should have, grow well, behave normally, is all important.
Right. Yeah. So like I say, you do have the background itself. So it's not just a case of, I don't know, Joe blogs that keeps fish, gets asked by a friend of his, let's make fish food. You have to have had the background and knowledge that you do in order to make it work. It's not just something that anyone can pick up.
I think, no, you're right. You've got to have some idea of what's needed for the fish to make sure that you're producing a good food. I think also, though, you've got to either be lucky or have the contacts to make sure that it becomes commercial.
Yes.
That was the big thing that I found. I when we started, I knew it was going to be tough. You've a tiny little one-man band competing with the likes of Tetra, JBL, Sierra, Aquarium, all the big names who have spent millions promoting themselves and marketing themselves. So my big thing was to find something that was niche, and the insect meal gave me that. And then you can just pick away at one little sector of the market, and then once you're in, then you start growing. It's pointless trying to compete with Tetra head on. Not that I ever wanted to, but I couldn't. They would just blow me away.
I mean, so when did Fishscience itself actually start? That what year was the first time you ever sold a product?
2013.
Wow. So I mean, that's more recent than I thought it was.
Yeah, no, it's not been going that long. And March 2013, I registered the company, and we actually showed the first products at a FBAS show in, I think it was September, and then actually had a trade stand at the Aqua Show that year in the October, and that's when we first started selling it. So it's
I mean, yeah, the trade stands at Telford you're talking about.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
I have never been. I get invited. I've been invited every year for the past 7 years. So before I even opened Fishman Aquatics, I have never been.
Oh, you should go. It's as somebody in the trade, it's just a great way of seeing a lot of manufacturers that are based in the UK or are supplying the UK all under one roof, and it's all aquatics. It's not sort of diluted with other pet products and garden centre products as some of the other trade shows are. It's just aquatics.
Oh, I mean, I don't drive, so if I can get a lift up next year, oh well, if it actually goes on, then hopefully I can attend. But if not, then next year I will. I think I might have to learn to drive by then.
Yeah, no, it is. It's. I mean, Aqua is something again that I was involved in right from the start. I was I acted as the chairman for the first however many shows, 7 shows I think it was. So I've just handed over the reins to Mark Winter from Aqua One, who's now the chairman of the group. But it's unfortunately it's not an event for the general public. We're looking at ways of making it available just for general fish keepers, but at the moment it's just a trade show. But it is just as the industry is, it's just a friendly, nice show where you can meet people, see the latest products, see the latest deals.
Yeah, on day 2 there's a meal, isn't there? On day 2 there's a big sit down dinner.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's the bit I'm looking forward to. I like food.
Yeah, if it goes ahead, obviously I mean the plans at the moment are all moving forward apace for this October, because it's every 2 years. So this year it should go really well. But I think the sit down meal is maybe the sort of one thing that falls victim to COVID. You know, the idea perhaps of having 600 people in a room all sat round.
Yeah, ready for October.
I think it's maybe a little bit too early. Maybe that has to happen next
well,
time.
maybe if we can get a lift off your father-in-law to go down, Callum, you can come with me.
Film it.
We can film it, yeah. We can film it for the channel. That'd be good.
That would be good.
Yeah, so I'll write that down. Yeah, write that down. Film Telford. I mean, I'll lose this notepad anyway before it gets anywhere near there, but
I'll remind you.
Yeah, thank you. Right, yeah. So, since we were talking about food, so with all your background, at no point did you tell me about a background in food and dietary requirements of fish. So, how did it start? What is Fishscience about more in terms of the dietary requirements, and how is it that you look into it from, I suppose, a scientific point of view?
With, as you say, my background until I started working for Tetra wasn't in the food. It was just general fish biology. But working for Tetra for all those years and being involved with the R&D guys at Tetra, you just soak it in. You know, there's just so much there that you can pick up and learn. So that really helped me in terms of working on pulling together a good range of foods. But I think for me, right from the start, I wanted to make sure that I was very targeted in what I was trying to achieve, and that was to have a food that was as natural as possible. So the insect meal was the key ingredient. That's what fish eat, and it really has proved to be initially the point of difference from everybody else. But I've tried to back that up by not using artificial ingredients. So for example, for things that support the fish's immune system, we use garlic, we use beta glucans from yeast, we use omega oils, all of which support the immune system and help keep the fish active. We do the same natural approach with color enhancers. So, you know, a lot of the fish that we keep, we like because of their superb colors.
Yes.
But those fish can't make their own color. They've got to eat it. It's got to be in the diet. And so providing diets with things like shrimp, krill, spirulina, chlorella algae, We use purple carrot, we use grass meal, we use a whole range of different things.
Funny thing, the next thing I was going to ask about was beta carotenoids and color enhancers in fish, things like astaxanthin and melanin and things like that. So what is it you look for in those color enhancers? Like, what food is it that you like to use or take things from?
I think that, I mean, there's certain foods that have always, certain ingredients, I should say, that have always been known to be good for boosting color. So things like krill meal are fantastic. If you've got fish that have got sort of reds and oranges in them, then anything with krill in it, you can just make it sparkle. Equally, spirulina is well known for its ability to boost the coloration of fish. And with what I understood of coloration, and it's kind of an area that I find fascinating, because it falls between sort of being a science and an observation of what fish keepers see. So there's a scientific background behind coloration in fish, but there's lots of bits that we as fish keepers see that scientists perhaps haven't explained, but if you tell them, they can explain it. And that's what I find fascinating, just kind of understanding both sides of it. So for me, it was a case of trying to get the foods, get the ingredients that would provide those color pigments, provide the astaxanthin, the erythrin, the melanin, and just make sure that it was in all the foods. Because I personally, I can't see a reason for not having color enhancers in the foods that you feed to the fish.
No, and especially all the color enhancers coming from superfoods themselves, which are in fact health for fish either way. Yeah. There's no point in discluding them from we'll call it a menu. We'll be fancy and call it a menu.
You're absolutely right. You know, why would you try and strip the good bits out of a diet just so that it didn't boost the color? I can't think of any fish that you wouldn't want or that wouldn't benefit from the color enhancers in the diet. And the important thing is that color in a fish can fade quite quickly. If you're not providing them with that regular supply of color pigment, then what can happen is that the coloration will just fade gradually. So you do need to be just trickling it into them all the time in the diet. And that, again, turning back to nature, that's what would happen in the wild. You know, in the wild, they would be eating insects, they'd be eating algae, they'd be eating sort of shrimps and snails, bits of vegetation, all of which contain the pigment.
Yeah, I mean, one of my best examples that I can draw on from using the correct foods would be maybe going 5 years ago back now. So I could see golden barbs as they were. It's a normal common fish, as you see them in the store. And they are completely different to what you'd see golden barbs in the wild. You know, they've got that lovely red hue and the green hue, and you know, they've got like 3 stripes of color going down the lateral side of the body, which are absolutely beautiful. But you never see that in shop environments. So what I did, so I've got the Fishscience tropical granular foods, and I fed a variety of frozen foods as well. So it was a Daphnia. I fed them red plankton because they were small and that was available, and it is quite good. And also some Artemia as well. So they got fed like 3-4 times a day. And from shop bought fish, so then changing the diet, those hues started coming out. And then in their fry, the hues were much more dominant as they were growing up as well. So it kind of reverted them back in a way. Yeah,
I think with a lot of fish, they've got the genetic makeup to be a certain color. You know, what you can't do is make a fish better than its genetics allow.
Yeah.
But what you very definitely can do by not providing the right food and not providing the right conditions and by stressing them is not allow them to be as good as they could be. And you know, golden barbs are a good example. If you put them in the wrong water conditions, if you had pollutants in the water, their colors just fade. And you know, even giving them the best food, if the water's polluted, they're not going to show off their best colors. But if you get that mix right, the right lighting, the right color enhancers in the food, the right water conditions, and fish that are happy and not stressed, then you can really get superb coloration.
Yeah, that's it. It was proven in what I got. Yeah, I mean, before even starting the interview and talking about the stuff that you spoke about, obviously you know a lot about food. It's evident that you know a lot about food and you know a lot about fish. So in terms of the Fishscience as a company, is there a next step? Is it just food, or are you thinking, because of your background in biology, you might move on to, I don't know, the next new wave of filtration, or anything?
When I started Fishscience, the idea was to use natural ingredients. That was my point of difference. So initially, the plan was to work on foods, and I would say we're 90% there with the foods that we've got. There's still a few that I would like to bring out. A discus food has been one that I would like to produce. And you know, a lot of people use beef heart, and that there isn't a lot of beef heart eaten by discus in the wild. So I'd like to provide be able to get a more natural diet that works and is effective. And I'd also like to come up with, we're looking at a sort of a larger sinking catfish or cichlid food based on the worm pellet ingredient we use. And I think once we've got those, we're probably more or less there. There'll still be improvements. There's always ways of improving foods. But in terms of the foods, I'm probably where I need to be. Then, when I started, my plan at the time was to look at some water treatments, again using natural ingredients, because you don't need to use artificial dechlorinators. There are some seaweed products that are really good at taking chlorine out of water.
I mean, this is something I've never heard of before, so you've caught.
So, you know, those, I don't know how well they would work. I know they work. You know, there's obviously a lot of work and a lot of testing needed to make sure that you're making sure it's effective. But there's just a few other ideas, and what I'd like to do if and when we get a chance is just look at that as an opportunity, see if there's a way of bringing out a range of natural water treatment.
Yeah, so yeah, that would be a complete game changer in the aquatics industry. Now, I'm on a lot of groups and forums and things like that I keep an eye on, and there's always been this one thing of, why do you want to add something unnatural into water? Now, if you're talking about using completely natural ingredients to do those things, that could kind of turn everything on its head a little bit. It'd be quite interesting to watch what happens.
Yeah, but possibly. I mean, it's not an easy thing. I'm sure, you know, people who have with more expertise than I've got could probably put pointers in the right direction and develop the right products. For me, it's been more a case of trying to pull together various different components that would work, and we're nowhere near there just at the moment. But for me, that would certainly be more of an opportunity than, you know, new filtration systems and technological items. That's I don't know enough about them. I know the basics. I know roughly how they work, but there are certainly people that are way more involved and more technically advanced than I ever will be on that side.
Yeah, I mean, you threw me completely off guard about treatments. So I thought that, like, after you've done food, filtration would be next as kind of a logical step, with having a background in it and, you know, the whole anaerobic cycle. Thought that would be a next logical step for your background. But water treatment is something I never actually thought about. I'm actually quite surprised, and I'm looking forward to getting those in store when you do develop them.
Yeah. Don't keep a space on the shelf, because it might be for a while.
I mean, in terms of my customers themselves, I have been asked quite a few times about larger pellets, and again, you've already brushed up on them. So say the cichlid floating pellets, which is, it's a relatively new release, is it, or is it a new release through my supplier?
No, it's only been going about just over a year. So it was launched just before COVID.
Oh, magic. So, I mean, there's one of my customers that I sent it to. He's called Big Fish Lad. He's also got a YouTube channel. He actually filmed his fish feeding on it for the first time. They instantly took to it and they loved it. The only thing is, if there was a bigger pellet, it'd be much easier for me to sell to a lot of other people, because I have a lot of large fish keepers.
Yeah.
There's not many large pellets on the market.
I think that's, I mean, that's the one thing that Fishscience hasn't done yet. On the food side, we're targeting, or we've addressed small fish. You know, we've got micro pellets, we've got micro granules, we've got granules, we've got the pellets we do are 2 and 3 millimeter in diameter. We've not got any big stuff yet. So that certainly is an opportunity. And I think then, you know, understanding what big fish keepers want, because if you've got big fish, you don't want to be buying the product in little packs. You want, you know, kilo, 2 kilo, 5 kilo bags.
Yeah, I mean, even though say the pellet was changed and it was kind of a 6 to 9 millimeter pellet, so it was a larger pellet. As soon as if you were to give the advice of soaking them in the water beforehand, obviously they'd expand a little bit more, rather than expanding the fish's stomach naturally and eat a bit too much more than they should do before it starts expanding. It could be an easier thing to market. Like, for example, if you do a 6 to 8 millimeter pellet, it expands to, I don't know, 12 to 14 millimeter. If you leave it to soak for a couple of minutes, then there's people out there with, I don't know, like 14-inch fish that are just going to absolutely lap it up and enjoy it.
Yeah, we've we looked, and with the worm pellets, for example, we produced a semi-soft pellet. So you just increase the level of the moisture a little bit and the level of oils a little bit, and you can end up with a food that is not, it's not very dry. In most foods, you've got between 6 and 8% moisture in there. And that means that the pellet is hard and very, very dry. And as you say, absorbs a lot of water and swells quite quickly. Whereas by just making that change to make them semi-soft, you probably take out 50% of that swelling, so that they don't swell as much when they go in the water. And they're more appealing to the fish. They like the fact that it's not a hard pellet. It's, you know, it's chewable.
Yeah, I mean, soft pellets is again something that I was going to ask you about. Is there aren't many that are on the market, and the one that you do see on the market quite a lot is soft Artemia pellets. And I absolutely love soft Artemia pellets. I think they're incredible. Is there a chance you're going to do that? Now, granted, if you increase the moisture in the food, that also diminishes the date in which you have to use it by.
Well, we've been able to produce a semi-soft pellet. Not in all of the foods. We've done it just in the worm pellet and a goldfish pellet, and we've still got the 3-year shelf life, so it's still okay for 3 years. It's a case of just being really careful in the level of moisture that you add. It's only a couple of percent more, because if you add too much moisture, then you lose that. You find that bacteria and fungi can grow on the foods.
Yeah.
And so you end up with them just going off really, really quickly. So it's a case of trying to keep them below the level that encourages any contamination and any bacteria or fungi to grow. But it is possible just by changing the ingredients, adding a couple of ingredients that sort of prevent it, the granules setting really hard. You can still provide this semi-soft version. And there's people like who is the New Era, do a range of soft pellets where they use slightly more oil, and they're, you know, fantastic. They get a really good acceptance from the fish.
Right. I mean, using oil as like some way to put moisture in is something I never would have thought of. Like, is it a normal thing in the food processing?
It's, I think what's happened, rather than answering your question straight away, just what's happened in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years is that there've been a lot of changes, a lot of innovations in the fish food market. If you go before that, then Tetra, Sierra, Aquarium, JBL just dominated the market. They were huge players, and they just, because of their power in the market, they just blocked everybody out. But in the last, let's say, last 10 years, what's happened is that people have tried to exploit little niches. They've tried to be innovative in coming up with different ways of approaching fish feeding. And so us with insect meal, New Era with their soft pellets, there's been various other foods form the shape of some foods have been used. I think Hikari have used their little spiral worm pellets that are kind of just sink in a different way. So people are just looking at ways that they can get into the food market, and that has meant there's been these new developments. So using oils as one of the ways of softening the pellet has certainly been a move forward. You've got to be very careful, because obviously if you're adding salmon oil, for example, or krill oil, or I don't know, squid oil, there's a whole range of different ingredients you can add. It's not as simple as just pumping them full of oil and making them soft, because the oil, if there's too much there, it comes out and you end up with a slick on the surface and it pollutes the water. But it's certainly a way of softening the formula and the way that it's actually formed.
Yeah, I mean, going off, well, slightly off topic, it's just a thought that occurred to me while you were talking. I mean, as soon as you started talking about using oils and the issue with oils, I instantly thought of, you know, the medicine industry and how omega-3s in capsule form and things like that, and how, I mean, obviously they're like sugar capsules. Is there not a way you could kind of include some form of capsule-based thing? I mean, I know I'm not the expert. Just as soon as you started talking about it, it went, and I need to ask.
Yeah, some time ago there was a company, I can't remember the details, but there was a company that actually produced a little encapsulated food. I think it was used for shrimps, and somehow they were making the ingredients and then coating them in a gelatin or some sort of capsule. The issue you've got all the time is the cost. You know, you could make some massively impressive foods by combining more and more and more ingredients and spending more time developing them. The trouble is, there is every time you're adding something to a food, you're adding to the cost, particularly if you're using good ingredients.
Yes.
And you get to a point where people just won't pay the money for the ingredients that's in front of it. And I can give you a superb example of that. I spoke to somebody about 5 years ago who showed me a food that I thought was brilliant. It was actually a flake. It was an oval flake, and it was made up of 2 layers. So it sort of, for argument's sake, had a brown layer and underneath a yellow layer, and they were stuck together. The brown layer softened quicker than the yellow layer, and because it softened quicker, it meant that it expanded faster. So the flake actually bent as the food softened, and then as the yellow layer softened, so it straightened, and that happened over a few seconds in the water. So you could actually put a flake on it was quite a long, thin flake. You could put a flake on the surface that bent and then straightened and moved.
And
that
movement quite expensive.
Well, that was the problem. It was brilliant because it was a great food. That movement triggered a really good feeding response, even in fish that were not that hungry, because you were creating movement. But the cost of putting those 2 together and making it just made it unfeasible. But shows how superb technology can be in developing specialist diets if we were prepared to pay for it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an incredible food and something that it possibly needs a few little tweaks, but there's potential there for something in terms of shape. Now, obviously Fishscience don't sell to the public. Is there a way that Fishscience can find their nearest retailer for Fishscience? Is there a store indicator on your website at fishscience.co.uk, or is there some way of just finding out fairly simply?
Yeah, we've got a store locator on the website. So if people just go on our website and key on the store locator tab, they'll be able to find a store that's local to them. And obviously, if they want to go online and Google the products, then they'll probably be able to find somewhere where they can get the products as well. We don't supply online directly. We don't supply, as you said, directly to the public.
We don't supply directly to the trader either, the retailer.
No, we supply through the wholesale. And my reason for that, from a business standpoint, was just my my background has always been working with the trade.
Yeah, to be fair, it's much easier to sell it in bulk to one place than it is to make constant deliveries and emails and sales to individual places.
Absolutely, and there are people that just do that better than I can. So it's silly for me to try and do it. If what I in the hours of the day that I've got, I'd rather spend that time, looking at the foods and trying to better the foods and better the way that we market them, rather than trying to send parcels out to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, obviously along with the website as well, you've got much more information about the whole range of foods that you do. I mean, it's not just a case of here's Fishscience, here's where you buy it. It's a case of you can look at individual foods and actually have a little bit more in-depth knowledge than a normal shop assistant would be able to give. So you can look preemptively at what you think is best for your fish.
I think so. I mean, that's certainly what we tried to do. I'm sure we could do more, and we do a little bit more on the Facebook page, for example, in terms of trying to provide added snippets on a regular basis. It's difficult because, as somebody sort of said to me very recently, why don't we do a food for angelfish? Why don't we do a food for guppies? You could develop foods for all of those, but then your shelves would be full with
every species of fish.
Yeah, 50, 60 different foods. And so it's a case more of trying to provide the basics, and then if somebody wants a perfect food for a guppy, then from the Fishscience range they would use the vegetable flake plus the krill flake and mix those two together, and that would provide you with that ideal diet.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. I mean, I was going to say a couple of fish after you mentioned that and say which foods would you think were best. So, for example, guppy, you've already said the krill and vegetable flakes. Obviously, guppies are a top feeder. They've got that up-facing mouth. So we'll go to the next fish. You said angelfish. What would you suggest for angelfish from your range?
Angelfish, it would depend on the size of them, but certainly the granular foods. They'll feed on the surface and they'll do really well on a flake food, like they're just the standard flake food. But I would also suggest using either the microgranules or the granules, depending on the size. So they go in the water and sink slowly,
yes,
and the fish pick away at them. If you were wanting to condition them, then for breeding or to get them to grow a little bit faster, then possibly the worm pellets as well. But I would use that as a mixture with the granules.
And what about using the stick-on glass treats? I mean, if someone asked me about angelfish food, I'd say, because most people want growth and they want health out of them, so I'd offer 3 different types of foods. So as a main one, I'd say the tropical granular. And then I'd go to the worm pellets. So if you had a dietary, so say you fed your fish 3 times a day, you do 2 lots of tropical granular, and then in midday you'd use the worm pellets. So you've got a good range. And then every other day you'd use maybe the shrimp stick-on thing. So you've got a nice big range there.
Yeah, I mean, the treats are just what they say. The treats were one of the early foods that we produced, and why I like them is that it allows people to interact with their fish. So most of the time you're feeding them 2-3 times a day, you're cleaning the filter, and you sit and watch them. But with the treats, you can actually stick something on the aquarium front, and it brings the fish to the front where you can see them, and you can kind of check that they're okay. So the shrimp treats are perfect for angels, and they become very, very ordered when you put treats in. And if you put the treats in with barbs or with guppies or with live bearers, you just end up with a big melee of fish all madly trying to get it. Whereas the angelfish just pick very sedately and take it in turns to pick a piece of the food off. It's great to see them. Really is good.
Yeah, I mean, they're great for interacting with the foods. Now, I mean, so far we've given everyone like a full insight to fish science. Like, everyone now will have some understanding of fish science and the industry that you're in. Now, Dave Poole, what does he keep?
What do I keep? At the moment, I've got 2 ponds. I've got one that is very close to the house that's got goldfish in it. the problem I've got where I live is there's quite an issue with herons. So rather than having lines and nets and everything over the pond, we just have one pond very close to the house. The other pond we've got is more natural, but it's got orf, it's got rudd, it's got some tench in it.
I like how you say natural and then say orf as the first species.
Well, I suppose I would say not bright coloured. They're blue orf rather than the golden ones. The issue we've got with that pond is if we put anything very visible, then it just it gets eaten. So we've ended up with rudd and tench and orf and non-colourful fish. I've tried to avoid things like carp just because it's planted and they like to make a mess of the pond.
Yes, yeah.
So, it'd be very tempting to add other fish, but I know you've got to do it, but I don't particularly like the netting over the pond or the lines around the pond to try and protect it from herons. So
I suppose there are other methods. Again, you could think of natural methods to do it with. I don't know. I mean, temporary nets, like nighttime and morning nets, when you're not observing the pond, it could be some form of, I don't know, fake reed kind of stuff, or just spitballing random ideas. I've never kept a pond, so the logistics of doing it, I have no idea.
No, there are ways you can do it. You can use the spitters, that squirt water when something breaks a beam. You can use various deterrents, but I wanted it to be as natural as possible, and that's the reason I haven't gone down that route. I've made it heron proof with the planting, which works well in the summer, and with plenty of lilies and aquatic plants in there to provide the fish with plenty of areas to hide. But just at this time of the year, it's difficult because the plants aren't growing and the fish are a bit exposed. So yeah, that's my fish at the moment. Before that, I had tanks particularly with angelfish. I love angelfish. So a big group of angelfish in a tank, I just think looks superb.
What's your favourite angelfish?
It's a good. I have on one occasion kept several altums, and I just thought they were superb. So I think if and when I start and have another aquarium, that would probably be the route I go down.
Mine are Leopoldi. I like the idea of a small angelfish.
Okay.
Never kept them. I've never even sold them, but I love the idea of them.
I think with angels, it's just a case of keeping enough. In an aquarium where you've got one or two, they're real characters, but they really don't behave as they should do until you get 4, 5, 6, 7 together, and then they just interact together, and you see them sparring and pairing off, and I just find them very relaxing to watch.
Right. I mean, I think we've given everyone an insight enough into fish science that they can start thinking about their very, very own dietary requirements in their fish. Like,
hopefully.
We've covered pretty much everything. Before we kind of start, I've got some quick fire questions for you to answer. Now, these are quick fire questions I ask everyone, and some of the answers are often surprising. So I don't want you to fully think about it, just the first thing that comes to your head. So first one might be an easy one for you. Favorite fish?
Angelfish.
Good. Most hated fish? No thinking.
No, that's true. Yeah, I shouldn't do that. Goldfish.
Goldfish?
Just the basic goldfish, yeah.
I was going to say, seeing as you just said you had a pond of goldfish, I was a bit surprised by that one.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can give you a reason if you want it.
Go for it.
Simply because I think some of the goldfish have been so inbred that they've become very weak. So I love goldfish, but I don't like the sort of the very inbred ones that are weakened and really not a viable species.
That is a very, very good answer. I can't deny that. Favorite fish shop?
Favorite fish shop? Fishman Aquatics, of course.
Everyone says that.
Well, you've got to do. I can't be your competitor down the road.
No, don't like. And so you're local, anything like. See, for me, I would have a fish shop that I would think that would be your favourite, which was also Graham's from the last episode's favourite as well. because it's pretty much everything that you stand for. Have you ever heard of a shop called Sustainable Aquatics?
I have, yes.
Like, that is pretty much you in terms of retail form. Everything's sustainable and knowing exactly where it's from.
Yeah.
Aside from me, what is your favourite shop?
It's difficult. No, I can't and shouldn't pick on a shop, because the one I don't pick on won't be very happy.
Right. That's a diplomatic answer, so I like that one. So your biggest inspiration in the hobby?
Biggest inspiration would be...
Could be a person or a fish or anything. Or even say, like, my biggest inspiration was my dad. He bought my first thing.
No, I would say it's people like David Ford and David Sands, and the fish keepers that are Dick Mills, the people that I kind of grew up seeing in publication and then getting to know and learning from.
David Sands is a name I've not heard for a long time.
No, Catfish Man, isn't he?
Yeah.
Catfish music.
Yeah, it's one of them names that I used to hear all the time when I used to go to Preston, the Preston District Aqua Society, but I've not heard it for a long time. Now,
yeah, he's still keeping fish, I think. Well, I know he is still keeping fish.
Now, there is one thing I was going to ask you about. See, anytime we get someone on, we always try and do a little bit of research. Now, we tried to have a look at your YouTube channel for Fishscience.
Okay.
Last video was around a year ago. Is the YouTube thing still a thing for you, or do you want to create content, or?
Yeah, we do. I'm not. I'll hold my hands up. I'm not very good social media wise. So there's a guy, John Mitchell, who helps me out with the Facebook and various other bits and pieces that we do.
Oh, so your John Mitchell is my Callum Smith.
Yes, possibly. if Callum's the one that does it, then yeah. But no, it's not my strength. I can talk all day, but actually putting it onto YouTube, onto Facebook, onto Twitter or whatever, I find I've got too many other bits and pieces that I'd get distracted with rather than getting on to do.
I'm exactly the same. I always find something else that I would rather do than just do a quick bit of text or a video. Even if it's something that is long-winded, I will always find another reason not to do it. So yes, John Mitchell is my Callum Smith.
Definitely guilty.
And I think we've pretty much covered everything. It's almost an hour-long video of talking about fish science, and yeah, it's been a very successful conversation in the fact that, well, as you said, you love to talk, and I've not had to prompt you with many things. You've just gone from subject to subject really easily. Now, good. I think this is a video that could be for everybody as well. So you don't have to be an advanced keeper to know about food. You know, any keeper keeps food. It's a normal thing. So it is one of those videos that could be quite easily accessible to any level of hobbyist.
I mean, certainly for me, obviously food's important. It's my job, but it's also important, I think, for fish keepers, because that's the thing that you're doing to interact with your fish 2 or 3 times a day. That's the trigger that makes you.
Yeah, with food, I love the whole fish food and how it's developed and the ins and outs of it. So usually when you go into a local shop, there's always a specialist in certain different areas. Anywhere where I've worked, I've always been the one-man fish room kind of thing. And if you specialize in a certain area, you kind of lack in other areas. So what I had to try and do was learn as much as I could about as many areas as possible, but I spent the extra time to look into food and the benefits of food. So yeah, I mean, the role of fish food for me is more important than the role of knowing about an individual species.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think food is one thing that you can rely on what's available. You know, I suppose in a way that's what I was hoping we could provide with Fishscience, is that we provide the scientific background and the reassurance that the foods do what they should do. so that you don't need to think too much about what you're giving the fish. You look at the Corydoras tablets, you feed Corydoras tablets to Corydoras, and that provides them with the nutrition. The nutrition can be as complex or as easy as you want to make it. If you want to really go into it, it's a never-ending subject that you would never get to the bottom of, because it's evolving and changing so quickly that as fast as you learn, there's something else to learn. But as a
Corydoras tablet. Now, I think we should end it on a human mistake through fish science. Now, I know full well that Fishscience have been on their social media. There was an issue with the identification of Corydoras.
Yes, that's true.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I think we should finish on a human error where we can't all be perfect all the time. So what happened?
I think John and I were talking, and we ended up talking about sort of doing little bits and pieces with different fish, and the fish that was put on there wasn't the species that was described as. So I don't know where the photo came from, but it wasn't the right one.
So am I right in thinking, was it either Ian Fuller or Mark Allison that provided you a picture of a Corydora for people to identify as well?
Ian did, yes. We had several other ones, but Ian did as well. Yeah, he provided a few more unusual ones.
That's the one I commented on, and I got it completely wrong anyway. So.
Oh, did you? Oh, I'm glad it's not just me that gets it wrong then.
No, Corrydoras are one of those things that I have my go-to guys for Corys that I always ask Friday. And Mark Allison is one of the people I go to, but he's not a big social media person.
No, I think certainly for me, and when we were developing the Corydoras tablets, we used Ian's expertise to try the foods and to give a lot back. So he would, in a way, what he says as far as Corydoras is concerned, I would just accept. So
I'm exactly the same. There's the one go-to guy. If he says something, you're like, okay,
don't question it.
Whatever says goes.
Yes, that's true.
Website on Fishscience website, which is what exactly? The full link?
It's fishscience.co.uk.
You can go straight onto a tab known as Find Your Nearest Store or something like that?
There would be Store Locator would be the one to just click on, and that would allow you to find a local stockist.
Right, so anyone can find Fishscience or the information about Fishscience on the website. Again, there are also videos on there as well, on the YouTube channel. There are still videos there. Yes, they're a year old, but there are still videos there, and people can find out different information about them on those videos. I did check them myself. So yeah, Fishscience, Fishman Aquatics' his favorite food. I just want to thank you for your time today, Dave. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sorry I couldn't send you anything out, but I will send you something out by the post.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. Not expected, but no, and it's been a pleasure. It's been really good to chat to you. And
it's gone along the same route. It's been a nice little chat, and yeah, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you. And I hope that other people will feel exactly the same way as they go to watch this as well.
Hope so, and hopefully we'll get a chance to actually meet face to face in the not too distant future.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. I mean, you'll have to come to me. I don't drive, so.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Yes, I get a meeting. So yeah, I'll give you a nice little virtual handshake.
Thank you.
And I will speak to you very, very soon.
You will do.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Appreciate it. Cheers then.
Bye. Thank you.